You have somebody like Byron Mallott who's sitting in the governor's office who's not only an influence, but a friend of the governor, who is giving him a different point of view.
Ahead on Frontiers, a look back at Byron Mallott, not the first Alaska Native to serve as lieutenant governor, but perhaps the first that has the governor's ear on Native and rural issues.
You know, the governor and I are nonpartisan. The only nonpartisan administration at the state level in this country.
It's a partnership in politics unlike any other in state history. Up next, a look at how this relationship is still a work in progress.
Sponsorship for Frontiers with Rhonda McBride is provided by Kupik Corporation and Spenard Builders Supply. Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief the best is yet to come, bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to Frontiers. It's been almost a year now that we've been coming to you from the studios of KTVA Channel 11. So we thought we'd bring back a piece from one of our first shows featuring Lieutenant Governor Byron Mallott. From businessman to public servant to politician, Byron Mallott has constantly pushed into new frontiers.
Hi, Dyson. Hi, Amy Doo.
Byron Mallott says his grandchildren, 9 of them,
There you go.
and one great-grandchild give him hope for a better tomorrow.
Oh, that's a perfect one. We can certainly see the future right here with these grandchildren and the grandchildren and the children of all of us. You want to skip a rock?
Mallott says he has had a remarkable life,
Oh my.
being in the right place at the right time.
I just knew that because of my mother's life, life had to be better for all of us.
Mallott's mother, Emma, was a full-blooded Tlingit and his father, J.B., was white. And together, in the back room of their house, they ran a store in Yakutat where Byron worked and learned the basics of business.
My mother worked hard every single day of her life. Incredibly intelligent, incredibly beautiful. Was an alcoholic.
Yet she pushed Byron to study hard because she saw education as a way to overcome racial discrimination.
It's a sense deep in your soul that because of your race, you're viewed differently. Back then, you weren't respected. You were viewed as inferior. There's no question about that. And it sears your soul. And I know that it seared my mother's soul.
Were you ever an angry man? An angry young man?
Oh, I was very angry, carried a deep rage inside me.
But Mallott channeled his anger into working with the system instead of against it. And eventually he found himself working for 3 different governors, Bill Egan, Jay Hammond, and Tony Knowles. And in the 1980s, Mallott became president of the Sea-Alaska Native Corporation, yet didn't give up commercial fishing in the summer. Although he was featured in National Geographic as a model Native CEO, it was important for Mallott to embrace his culture, to show it's possible to live in 2 worlds, both then.
And we must stay together for a purpose, as people who bring the beauty and the tradition.
And now.
From Angoon to Anaktuvik Pass and Anchorage, that we Alaskans can be one.
Mallott's message hasn't changed, and now there are signs of his influence.
When you start doing something for the children, you know you're on the right path as far as I'm concerned.
The governor's plan to make it easier for tribes to play a role in the adoption of Native children follows decades of litigation between the state and tribes.
This is a huge step forward.
Former Senator Albert Kukesh has been on the front lines of this fight.
I think what's different now is that you have somebody like Byron Mallott who's sitting in the governor's office who's not only an influence, but a friend friend of the governor who is giving him a different point of view.
But there's one area where the two men disagree on gay marriage, when the governor chose not to interfere with the Attorney General's decision to join several other states in fighting gay marriage. So did he discuss his situation in which his Attorney General filed this amicus brief with you?
Yes.
What advice did you give him?
I said to him, Governor, you know how I feel. I believe what I believe. I know you're conflicted between your constitutional responsibilities and that of your Attorney General and your core belief in equality for every person, every Alaskan, and I will respect your judgment.
All of us know someone, we have coworkers, we have friends who are either gay, lesbian, bisexual. Of course, that always enters into the moral quandary about this. How about you?
That doesn't matter. The very fact that an individual somewhere, whether it's part of your family or whether it's someone that I don't even know, can have a sense of despair, a sense that opportunity is not available to them because of the way they are treated, because of the way others view them, particularly people with power.
Sarah Palin, a strong conservative, also weighed in on the side of gay rights during her administration.
Well, this governor is for gay rights. He is for the part that I may have played in not saying, Governor, you need to do this. We'll accept the judgment of history and even of the folks today who are affected by it. But Native people suffered incredible discrimination of all kinds for generations. And to me, it's a long-term journey. And every step of the way will not be forward, could even be backward, could even be standing still. Woo! Yes. I couldn't live my life with a sense of hope if I didn't believe that. If every single issue that I had to address was a tripwire, that somehow, if this doesn't happen, oh my God, our world is at an end.
Mallott says he and the governor have one thing in common that helps put their partnership in perspective: grandchildren.
It helps to cement the notion that being in office together is all about Alaska and its future. The powerful visual sense that it's about them and it's not about us.
You want yours yet? You gonna take that home?
Since those early days, the relationship between the governor and lieutenant governor continues to evolve. When we come back, two longtime Alaska Native journalists, Joaqlin Estus and Nellie Moore, look at Byron Mallott's impact on Native and rural politics.
We have a story of 27 families that put 18 months of their lives into building a village, a home for themselves and their future. Our Inupiaq culture goes back thousands of years, carried by a strong sense of community. Our relationship with our natural surroundings is at the heart of our culture. By investing in future generations through development that is balanced with the love of our land, the Kupi Corporation brings together traditions of the past with visions of the future.
At Spenard Builder Supply, we know it takes a lot of ingredients to get it just right. That's why we have design centers in every store to personalize the most important rooms in your home. We'll help you select cabinets, faucets, and appliances that fit your style. So all you have to worry about is how much oregano goes in Mom's pasta sauce. Spenard Builder Supply. Building for life.
Now offering financing with no payments or interest for 12 months. Visit our design experts today at your local Spenard Builder Supply.
Air travel for Frontiers is provided by Pen Air. When business or recreation takes you anywhere across the state, Pen Air is there. The only family-owned airline serving Alaska. Pen Air, the spirit of Alaska.
When I got here, I heard this term, uniquely Alaskan. And I thought, what does that mean? Then I started covering these events. Iditarod, Mount Marathon, Arctic Winter Games, hockey games in 20 below. So now I know what uniquely Alaskan means.
There's an old saying, you won't find news in a newsroom, and you won't find Joe Vigil there if he can help it. To say Joe gets around is an understatement.
We came down here.
See, he's not the kind of anchor content to just read the news.
Fly from Portland to Washington.
He'd rather be out here, where the news lives. Joe Vigil and KTVA 11 News. Be there.
Byron Mallott appears to be emerging as the Walker administration's philosopher-in-chief, a role for Lieutenant Governor the state hasn't ever seen before. The campaign of 2014, two very odd political bedfellows team up. A Democrat abandons his run for governor to run as lieutenant governor on an independent ticket. Turns out a winning combination. At the inauguration, people wondered where this relationship of political convenience was headed. Much to the surprise of many political observers, the result, what some jokingly called a bromance. With frequent hugs exchanged and constant praise from the governor.
I'm the luckiest governor in the history of Alaska. I go to work every day with Byron Mallott.
It's praise Byron Mallott said he found a little embarrassing. But the two now share side-by-side offices at the Capitol.
I came in to the office here, and he was sitting in that chair. I said, "Governor, do you have an appointment?" He chuckled, but it's the kind of relationship we have.
Thanks for coming to the People's House this morning.
A relationship from all reports that continues to grow.
I think maybe I've helped Bill Walker laugh a little bit more. And I think that's important.
But on matters of importance, the governor continues to utilize Mallott.
If the legislature does not act in this session, Alaska is going backwards.
Recently, he's taken the governor's prescription for the state budget crisis all across Alaska to places like Bethel.
All of the pieces to resolve the fiscal gap are on the table. Thank you very much, Senator Murkowski.
Or this week to the nation's capital, where Mallott testified on the governor's behalf about a road from King Cove to Cold Bay.
We live there. We die there. Our bones, our ancestral home, for thousands of years is in that place. And our reality is often completely ignored.
When the two of you get together, what is it that you value about what he brings to the table?
His love for Alaska is I mean, he can't hide it, and his passion for Alaska.
A passion and a partnership on the third floor of the Capitol that continues, unlike any the state has ever seen before. With most of the attention focused on the governor and the legislature right now, Byron Mallott has the advantage of being under the radar. That is why we're joined by two longtime observers of Byron Mallott, Nellie and Joaqlin Estus, two veteran Alaska Native journalists. And I guess I want to start out with your first memories of Byron Mallott, because both of you have covered him for a long time.
Well, he was president of Sea Alaska, the for-profit regional corporation for Southeast Alaska, and I'm a Sea Alaska shareholder. So I'm sure I was aware of him back in the 70s, but my first really vivid memory is from 1982 at the first celebration that was put on. And this is him in regalia, and that's how he was then. He's his clan leader, and he's been active in the Yakutat dance group
Look
for a
at
long
him
time.
there. He looks like he could be, you know, in a national magazine, a business magazine, kind of the quintessential CEO. Two worlds, I think, has kind of been his message throughout his career.
I think, you know, you mentioned earlier that he grew up, his family had a little store, and I think from the very beginning, he adjusted to that lifestyle. You know, in one hand, you're there as a child who has come from a home that's got a business, and also playing outside with your friends and throwing rocks and being a Tlingit. So I think he definitely had a interesting upbringing.
So what's your first memory of Byron Mallott as a journalist?
Many, many years of covering Alaska Federation of Natives. I have not been personally acquainted with him that much, except for some interviews, but I've been watching him for many years, as Joaqlin said, from See Alaska and working with AFN mainly. And of course, he did some work with a permanent fund dividend.
So here he is now. You know, we're seeing him in his role as lieutenant governor. Did you ever expect him to make that leap into politics in a statewide office? I didn't, but, you know, because his background seemed to be much more in business. He was mayor of Yakutat at a very early age when he was 22. But then he went into See Alaska. He was head of the permanent fund. He worked, he's been on the boards of directors for several banks. He was on the board of Alaska Air, which runs Alaska Airlines. So, I mean, obviously it wasn't outside the realm of possibility, but I didn't really anticipate it.
I have to say that I never really thought that he would. I thought he was pretty much in the role that he was going to continue being in for the rest of his political career. But I think he's really turned out to be an asset in this time of craziness we have, trying to deal with budget shortfalls and political issues, things that the legislature's doing. I think he's handling it pretty well. So at least in past administrations, there hasn't always been a voice right next to the governor. So how is the Native community perceiving this? Do they feel like Byron Mallott is their voice? Well, I can't speak for the Native community. I know that I had a little flash of pride when I saw him wearing his regalia and meeting the president. And then I think in Southeast, I think he's been doing a really good job being representing Alaskan interests on transboundary issues. You know, you have these major rivers in Southeast Alaska. The Alsac-Tatshenshini is near Yakutat. It's not directly affected now, but it could be. The Taku, the Stikine, and the Unuk rivers. These are major sources of, it's spawning grounds for fisheries. They're very important. Canadians are mining upriver, and he's been there, you know, giving Alaskans a stronger voice in permitting and basically trying to prevent pollution from coming into those rivers. And I think he's been out there. He's really reaching out, trying to get information and opinion from the rural communities. For example, since he came into office, he's been to 24 communities across Alaska. And if people hadn't known him before, I think they're getting to know him. And he's getting a lot more coverage. For example, he just testified in Washington, D.C. about the King Cove Road and the need to get that road so that people can have a safe way to be medevaced. They need to take off from Coal Bay. And in his speech on Thursday in Washington, D.C., he said, in preserving something for the public good, talking about Eisenbeck, he said, for the greater good, our lives are minimized, marginalized, and in many ways consciously determined to be unimportant to the point where we become faceless, and the fact that we are there is ignored by establishing something else as a critical factor in the importance of that place. Kind of a, you know, complicated way to describe it, but I think very effective in describing the way people feel about many aspects of issues similar to this. So someone in high office being able to say those words authentically is maybe a little bit different. Very much so. So I tend to think of two guys like Bill Walker and Byron Mallott. They're politicians. They're you know, they have big egos, and they wouldn't be able to do those jobs if they didn't have big egos. And I always wondered at the beginning of this whether their egos would get in the way, because that has often happened
between past governors and their lieutenant governors. You know, I think Loren Lehman had his budget cut by Frank Murkowski. Sean Parnell wrote a very nasty letter to Meade Treadwell that wound up public, kind of trying to rein him in. So I guess given that, this relationship is kind of different. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, if by big ego you mean somebody who dares to hope and to try to do big things, I think that's true. And
but when you get big egos together, they often clash.
Well, the first time, I mean, when they were still campaigning, they were in a debate at the Alaska Federation of Natives, and the way Bill Walker described it was, he said, it's as if it's just the two of us running, because we're out on the campaign trail, we're going to community events, and Sean Parnell is not. He's not on this circuit that we're on. And Walker said that they've gotten to know each other and they have become friends. And then in the debate, you hardly ever see this. One of them would say something, state his position on something, and the other one would say, I agree with him. So I think there's the fact that they're genuinely friends. There's also the fact that they wouldn't be where they are if it wasn't for the other. I mean, Governor Walker dropped his lieutenant governor candidate, Craig Feener, and Byron Mallott walked away from the Democratic nomination for governor. In other words, he said, okay, I won't run for governor to become lieutenant governor. That was the unity ticket. And, you know, Walker talked about it a lot. And, you know, I think he made some commitments that he would give the lieutenant governor a stronger role.
And I think, you know, just calling themselves a unity ticket was a big step. And one thing that we see in some of the video and pictures that you've shown is they have a comfort with each other. You know, they're able to raise their arms in victory and do things that you can feel.
Hugs.
Yeah, you
Pats
can.
on the back.
You can feel it, you know, and it's interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see where it goes in the remainder of the term, because there's a lot of big issues out there, and the possibility for disagreement could be strong.
So do you think that Bill Walker is using Byron Mallott's strengths?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think Byron has, you know, he has a lot of experience as a public speaker, and he's only gotten better. And so when the governor sent him out to all these regional hubs and communities, he had Byron talking to people about the fiscal plan that they've put together. And I'm sure that was to try and drum up support so that they could contact their legislators and say, I think that's a good way to go. So there's that. And then I can't help but think that as a businessman, he must have been involved in negotiations. So sending him to work with the transboundary, on the transboundary issue, that's making use of his experience as a longtime resident of Southeast Alaska, and also his experience as a businessman.
I think so. The governor has put out a fiscal plan, or a kind of a framework, and he said it's a work in progress. They've gone out and held meetings, and I think there's a new study out that just said that people in the rural areas are going to be hurt by the plan that the governor put forth. And so it'll be interesting to see how things work out as far as rural people. But I think Byron's strength has been in going out to those villages, having a comfort zone there. I mean, you can feel it when someone comes out to have a meeting in a village, whether or not, you know, they feel really comfortable there and can...
If they're just being talked to.
Yeah, and I think Byron has the ability to carry that off, and I think people will respect that. And will, you know, maybe respect that it is a work in progress, and hope that some of their input will be acknowledged in the end.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being here with us to share your insights. Of course, we'll continue this conversation on the web. Joaqlin Estus and Nellie Moore. Well, coming up, This next story fits the only in Alaska category. In Barrow, taking on a sport meant for warmer climates. Hey, but not anymore.
I just want cremation.
No hidden costs, no add-ons.
Cremation is much more affordable.
Dignified, ecological.
I just want something basic. The simpler, the better.
Cremation sure makes a lot of sense. The Cremation Society of Alaska is now serving families in Anchorage and in the Valley, and we are always on the web at alaskacremation.com. Call us today at 277-2777 or in the Valley 373-8627.
We taught him how to hit a baseball, how to hit a receiver, the strike zone, the net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
One caring foster parent
can make the difference
between a good life
and a not so good life
for a child.
What does it take?
The willingness to be there.
The willingness to care.
The willingness
to open your heart.
And your home.
For one child.
One child.
One child.
Me.
Will you be the difference for one child? Call today, 1-800-478-7307.
I don't know that there's an easy season when you're a meteorologist. This is a really dynamic atmosphere. We're in between some mountains. The Alaska Range, you can see it over there. We got the Chugach over here, the Kenai over here, all these inlets, this landmass, a big valley that kind of creates kind of a vortex at times. So it just is pushing and pulling, and there's a lot of different pieces to the weather puzzle out here. And it can change. You change one of those pieces, and it can just throw everything up in the air.
When you think of playing golf, Barrow is probably the last place that probably comes to mind. But that's exactly what they did last Sunday. 11 players braved 30-mile-per-hour winds to take part in the Top of the World golf tournament. It's a 9-hole course around the Middle Lagoon. Golfing in Alaska's northernmost city certainly has its challenges.
The first time I played golf, I thought that it was the funnest time ever, and actually I probably played more here on the ice than I have real golf.
Of course, it's the weather, climate, and as you can see today, it's blizzard conditions, and it'll be a challenging day today.
The golf tournament is part of an annual festival in Barrow. Looks like fun, except for the wind. Well, from the frontiers of golf to politics, you'll find it here. Thank you for being a part of this week's conversation. We'll see you next week.